Okay, so what we're going to start with this afternoon is further talk about the Eightfold Path. And I'm really not planning on specifically attaching that to any steps till after the break this afternoon, but I'm happy to shift that. And so if anybody has any thoughts or anything that comes up, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll shift into that. I just gave a very quick overview of the Eightfold Path this morning. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And then we talked about right view in the context of the fourth and fifth step. And so I was going to talk a little bit about right intention or right thinking this afternoon. And going back to talking about my own story with facing up to my alcoholism, my thinking really needed a great deal of changing. What they talk about with right intention as far as the various specific aspects of it, the first is intention of renunciation. Intention of renunciation, having the intention to stop engaging in behaviors that are not worthwhile or worthy, ones that don't work well. And what I wanted to do was simply be out of trouble. I wasn't at all aware of the concept of moving into the next intention, which is the intention of goodwill, the intention to do well by myself and to do well by others, the intention to consciously, basically, try and lead as good a life as I could at any given time. And the final right intention is the intention of harmlessness. Having it be a goal to not cause problems for other people in my life, which is a lot different than the self-centered, wanting to not be in trouble, wanting to catch a buzz, wanting to be rich, wanting to be well respected. So there's three major intentions. The intention of renunciation. Another way that's put is the eradication of craving. Wanting to let go, purposely to let go of wanting the new car, wanting the bigger house, wanting more prestige, wanting more power, having the misconception that I will be happy, as sort of Ron was referring to before lunch. If I have the house, the car, the 5 kids, and all those things, then I will be happy. It's actually letting go of that idea that that's where happiness comes from. Because happiness doesn't come from there. It's an internally generated thing. And as you get further into meditation, that will become clearer and clearer as we start to spend more time in a state of inner peace and equanimity that isn't driven by having just won the contract or hit the lottery. It's coming and waking up every day going, I am glad I'm awake, rather than, I wish I was dead. A huge shift. It's an internal thing. The third item of the Eightfold Path is right speech. And this is something that I think is, how you doing? This is something that I think is very apropos of those of us that are in 12-step programs, because we see all the time a lack of right speech. And there are a lot of different aspects of it. The first one is abstaining from false speech. So we stop saying things that are untrue. We stop speaking lies. Very important thing to shift. Actions of speech. The Buddha singled out right speech as one aspect of the path to awakening. The Eightfold Path, and of the 10 unwholesome actions, 4 involve speech. This should be a wake-up call, a bell of mindfulness ringing before we speak. But do we really make speech part of our spiritual path, or do we relegate it to some place of lesser importance in our lives? When we pay attention, we see how much our words affect our relationships with other people, condition our minds, and lead to karmic consequences in the future. The care it takes to avoid harmful speech creates a vast playing field of mindfulness in our daily lives. And then it goes on, lying is the first in this group of unskilled verbal actions. And so it's pretty obvious, I think, we read how it works before every meeting, that we're supposed to do everything we can to become more honest. And lying would be something that we would be pretty quickly trying to eliminate from our lexicon, from what we're doing. So actively lying is one thing to go, and then a lot of us learn soon thereafter that something we could benefit letting go of is from lies of omission, speaking things that aren't wholly true, speaking things that are misleading or will obfuscate or obscure what the truth is. And we see it all the time in the rooms when people are not being honest with themselves and not being honest with others, and we see the pain that it causes. The second type of thing to abstain from is slanderous speech. And sometimes that can be outright like, boy, is he or she a jerk, or this or that. Oftentimes it can be something like, did you hear that so-and-so is drinking? Did you hear that they are sticking their hand in the till? Did you hear this or that other thing that may or may not be true, but causes a lot of damage, and it causes damage for the individual, and it causes damage in the group. So it's abstaining from slanderous speech. There's another thing about that I wanted to hit. He avoids slanderous speech and abstains from it. What he has heard here, he does not repeat there, so as to cause dissension there. And what he has heard there, he does not repeat here, so as to cause dissension here. Thus he unites those that are divided, and those that are united he encourages. Concord gladdens him. He delights and rejoices in concord, and it is concord that he spreads with his words. Then it goes on to the next speech that is avoided is harsh speech. He avoids harsh language and abstains from it. He speaks such words as are gentle, soothing to the ear, loving, such words as go to the heart and are courteous, friendly, and agreeable to many. So that just makes sense. How many times in meetings we hear, stop with the F-bombs, stop with this and that, and it really improves the tone of what's going on in meetings. And the same is true in our homes. When we're using negative words with our loved ones, it's damaging. A less obvious thing, but something that comes up again in meetings all the time, is stopping idle chatter, they call it. He avoids idle chatter and abstains from it. He speaks at the right time in accordance with facts, speaks what is useful, speaks of the Dhamma, the teachings, and the discipline. His speech is like a treasure, uttered at the right moment, accompanied by reason, moderate and full of sense. And that's an interesting thing, to just basically to sort of cut down on the chit-chat and the small talk. And the Buddhists regard that as a virtuous action, a way to be. I think that's something that usually comes further down the path, although there's a number of us who aren't very comfortable in the world, and we abstain from small talk for reasons other than that. And So this can be a freeing thing in that regard. The next right action is the next number of the Eightfold Path is right action. And that will remind you very much of the 5 precepts, because the only one that's missing is abstaining from intoxicants. For right action, again, we're at the moral precepts, or the moral phase of the Eightfold Path. And we're talking about abstaining from taking life, abstaining from stealing, and abstaining from sexual misconduct. And abstaining from life, as far as the Buddhist teaching goes, is life of humans and of any other sentient beings. And so that's a pretty big undertaking, especially for those of us that like to hunt, eat meat, wear leather shoes. There's a lot of places we can take the concept. Abstaining from stealing, abstaining from taking that which is not offered. They have several categories of stealing. Stealing, robbery, fraud, deceitfulness, and snatching. Snatching, like snatching an old lady's purse. They were very, 2,500 years ago, they were already covering all the bases for us today. So that's pretty obvious things that we want to stop doing, and the fact is that a lot of us, when we were using, engaged in behaviors that were like this and that we wouldn't engage in today. And that's an important part of the path. Right livelihood. Not transgressing your ideals of love and compassion. No dealing in arms, the slave trade or prostitution, the meat trade, the sale of alcohol, drugs, or poisons. And finally, no making prophecies or telling fortunes. I'm not exactly sure why that was quite up there in this range, but I suspect there's a good reason for it. So right livelihood is basically refraining from being a hunter or a fisherman, a butcher, keeps from selling arms, drugs, intoxicants, and not engaging in the slave trade or selling oneself. And these are the moral underpinnings of what comes next with the meditative and concentration steps. At this point, I was planning on having doing a metta meditation. But what I was thinking we might do instead is to give people the opportunity to either sit in here and do a meditation or do a walking meditation. How many people would be interested in a walking meditation? Oh, good. Okay, so there's a lot. And how many people have never done a walking meditation? Okay. So we're going to have a little instruction in how to do walking meditation. And there's a couple different views on that, and so I'll give you both views, and you get to choose what works best for you. When one's doing samadhi meditation, we generally have a tendency to call it sitting meditation, but properly done, it can be done either sitting, lying down, standing, or walking. And it's the same is true with Vipassana meditation. Sitting, lying down, standing, or walking. And different people prefer one or more of the postures to the others. And walking meditation has a very nice flavor to it, especially in my view, if you can do it outside. The general way that it's taught is that you proceed in a very slow, in a very mindful way, paying attention to your body and its movements the same way when we're sitting in meditation, the same way we'd be concentrating on our breath and the feelings in the body. So when you advance one foot in front of the other, what you want to be doing is being aware of your entire body with a focus on the lifting and returning to the ground of each foot as you lift it and return it to the ground. If you're meditating in many monasteries or retreat centers, you'd often be doing walking retreats inside, either in a room this side or considerably smaller, maybe in hallways. And so you're going to be advancing a certain number of paces and then turning around and coming back. The idea is to be present. The idea is to be right here, right now. And many people can reach a deep state of meditation as they observe the heel of their foot lifting off the ground, followed by the toe lifting up and setting back down, followed by the lifting up of the heel, the toe, and the placing back down. As you're doing a walking meditation, you can adjust the pace to what works for you, and you can observe your judgments of yourself, your criticisms of yourself, your criticisms of the people ahead of you that are going too fast or too slow, the people that are getting in your space, the noises that the person who just started the lawnmower are inflicting upon you. The idea is to deepen your awareness of all things as they enter and leave. The judgments that come and go are big for all of us. And this is one more way to express it. You may spend time noticing the smell of the flowers or the bushes or the cut grass. And what you do is you notice the sensory experience, whether it's olfactory or audio or visual. Notice it without judgment and return to your breath. Notice it without judgment and return to your breath. Notice your foot lifting and return to here and now. Notice your foot being set down and return to here and now. And what we're trying to do is deepen awareness and deepen our connection with ourselves here and now. I'm not going to find that quote right now. But I'll get to that later. So one of the things, it's a little bit different than what I just said, is when Thich Nhat Hanh does walking meditations, his view is to flow like a river. He's not as concerned about paying attention to the particulars of lifting and placing your foot on the ground. He's not as focused on maintaining a slow and very conscious pace. He's more of an advocate of being aware of all the natural phenomena around you and coming back to yourself. And noticing the connectedness between what you're feeling, what you're hearing, what you're experiencing in your body as far as temperature, and the connection, as I mentioned earlier, the cup of tea being connected to the cloud in the sky and to the rain that falls and it waters the tea bush. That's where he would have the focus be, is the interconnectedness of it all, and it's all being one. So you can go out and do the mindful breathing in a more classic, as I guess Jack Kornfield would have been teaching us, or in a little more flexible way that Thich Nhat Hanh would recommend. And what I would suggest is going outside and doing it rather than doing it inside. And there's plenty of room on the grass on this side of the house, and you could use the sidewalks going down. You might be able to use the street, although that's a little iffy. Yeah. And anybody that would like to stay in here and do and sit and meditate, I'm going to stay in here and have a small sitting meditation, nothing too guided. So why don't we take 20 25 minutes for meditation, and I'll ring a bell when the time is up. So basically, keep doing your walking meditation until you hear a bell, and then we'll talk about it when you come back.